The third film in a trilogy can often be the one which is really hard to get right. You have to make sure that it maintains the good qualities in the previous two films, as well as add something new to make it unique. Does X-Men The Last Stand achieve this? I'm Tommy Bowyer from Movie Rewind, and without further ado, let's get into this. X-Men The Last Stand was directed by Brett Ratner. It was released in 2006 and it is the third and final instalment of the original X-Men trilogy. Now, in terms of the production, there is one major difference. Brett Ratner directed this film rather than Bryan Singer, who directed the previous two X-Men films. Now, directors are unique. They like to stamp their own mark on a franchise. And Brett Ratner made a number of changes in this film which weren't in the previous two X-Men films. Today we will be seeing if The Last Stand's changes end this trilogy in a satisfying way. Now, there are too many characters in this film to give adequate levels of development, and that basically means that the character development in this film is really bad because there's just so many characters. Out of all of them, probably the ones that are developed the most are Wolverine and Storm. Storm especially gets a lot more development in this film compared to the previous two films. I think that's because we see more of her and she kind of becomes one of the leaders of the X-Men, so I think that's handled really well, and she's probably the best beneficiary of this film's character development. The majority of the others don't really get anything. Cyclops and Professor X are killed off in this film, so their development is very low. And they're basically killed off just to add shock value to say, oh my god, Dark Phoenix is so bad because she's killed off Professor X and Cyclops. They do introduce new characters in this film. We see Beast, Angel, and a lot of Magneto's mutants. The majority of them very underdeveloped, except for Beast. He's probably the only one I can say I understand his motives and what he stands for, and he does get adequate levels of development. The problem is there are so many characters crammed into this film that none of them get time to breathe and stand out in the audience's mind. And their character development suffers as a result of that. So I'm going to give character development a 6 out of 10 because there's too many characters and not enough depth given on what their motives are and why they're taking specific sides. The performances are to a large extent satisfying. I think that's because the casting is on point. Hugh Jackman and Halle Berry are probably the best actors in this film. I think that's because they get the most screen time, so they're able to showcase their acting abilities, and they're just really well cast as Wolverine and Storm and stand out in the viewer's mind. Famke Jenssen gets a chance to highlight the Dark Phoenix aspect of Jean Grey's personality. She does well with what she is given. I just think that we don't see enough of her to really make her performance stand out in our minds. Out of the new additions to the cast, Kelsey Grammar as Beast is brilliant casting. He's actually probably one of my favourite casting choices in any X-Men film because he just perfectly fits that role and he gets enough screen time to really stand out in the viewer's mind. In my opinion, one of the best casting decisions they've ever made. However, this film does show that they're not always on point when casting in X-Men films because Vinnie Jones was cast as Juggernaut. And I'm the Juggernaut bitch. So, yeah, the Juggernaut is rubbish in this film and Vinnie Jones was just miscast and really shouldn't have been anywhere near that role because he sucks at it. So I would say that the majority of the performances are strong because you have the likes of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in there and they're well cast to their roles. So the majority of the performances are on point. It's just a couple, such as the Juggernaut, which let it down. So I'm going to give the performances an 8 out of 10 because most of them are alright. However, they're not all right. The effects in this film hold up pretty well overall. If I had to pick up standout ones, it would be the effects done on Storm and Dark Phoenix. They hold up really well and they don't look dated for a modern audience. Although I do feel that some of the effects don't look fantastic. When they go to Alkali Lake and discover Jean Grey, there's some rocks floating around and the rocks just don't look great, to be honest. They do look fake. So some of the CGI in this film is starting to look dated, but overall they hold up pretty well. So I'm going to give the effects a 9 out of 10 because apart from the odd thing, which is really just me nitpicking, they're still pretty good. The main reason which lets this film down and means that it's not as good as the previous 2 X-Men films is the story. Because, much like the characters, there is so much crammed into this film. They basically have 2 storylines. They have the Cure storyline and the Dark Phoenix storyline, and they cram them into one and try and condense it into one film, and it doesn't work. Now, the Cure stuff is actually handled really well. This idea of a cure for mutant disease, which is very controversial, with some mutants being, oh yeah, we can finally fit in with the rest of society, and other mutants being just offended by the idea of this so-called cure. One scene in particular stands out, and that's when Rogue bursts in and says, is it true? Have they finally found a cure? And Storm says, no, it's not, because there's nothing wrong with us. We don't need a cure. And Rogue, because she can't touch someone without killing them, says, well, I'd like this cure because it would give me a better quality of life. So that's handled really well. I think if they had just focused on the cure stuff, then it would have worked. I like the idea of Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants being against this cure, and the massive battle at the end where they're fighting over it is done really well. So if it was just the cure stuff, this film would be really good. However, the Dark Phoenix stuff, which I think needs a film on its own to be honest, is kind of crammed in to the point where it's like they've got to stop Jean Grey because she's become the Dark Phoenix and Wolverine needs to kill her in order to save the rest of humanity. And to be honest, the Dark Phoenix stuff should have been left out for a full film. It just shouldn't have been included in this film. The problem with the story is that it's muddled because there's so much going on and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Nothing is satisfied because there's just too much going on. So I'm going to give the story and writing a 5 out of 10 because it really lets this film down, and this should have been 2 separate films, not just one. So for this film's special recognition, I'm just going to discuss whether this film, being the concluding part of the trilogy, ends the trilogy in a satisfying way. And in my opinion, it's a very mixed bag. Now, I like the final action scene. The X-Men versus the Brotherhood of Mutants. It's what the trilogy has been building up to, and it's handled really well. The effects hold up well, and the action is strong. Now, when they kill off the Dark Phoenix and Jean Grey, it is emotional. I think it could have been more emotional if we'd seen more of Dark Phoenix and we understood this conflicting version of her personality, but we don't. So it's not as emotional as I think the filmmakers would have liked us to think. So, in my opinion, this film does some things which end this trilogy well, although other things are kind of left, really, that's it. So I'm going to give the special recognition for concluding the trilogy in the satisfying way a 7 out of 10 because some things are done right. However, I think there could have been a lot done better. So in conclusion, X-Men The Last Stand is definitely one of the more unique of the X-Men films. It has strong characters and it has an interesting storyline in terms of the cure. However, what lets it down is the fact that it feels so bloated. It has 2 storylines which should have been 2 separate films and so many characters that they don't get enough development. And that really leads to an unsatisfying conclusion to what has been up to this point a pretty great trilogy. So overall, I'm going to give X-Men The Last Stand a 35 out of 50, which gives it a grade 3 ranking. Honestly, there's a lot that I enjoy about this film. The problem is that I can just think if they just narrowed the storyline down and didn't bloat it, it could have been just so much better. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed my review of X-Men The Last Stand. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. Now, next I will be reviewing X-Men Origins Wolverine, which, let's face it, is probably one of the most controversial of the X-Men films. I'm looking forward to reviewing that and I hope you're looking forward to watch it. And I will see you in another one. See ya!